All right, everyone.
You're launching Spur tonight, aren't you?
We're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Zachary Sanfilippo. I am from CRL Associates. For those of you that didn't see it, there is fantastic Comal food over there, so please go take some because it is very delicious, and I can't take it all home with me, so it needs to go into your good bellies. Let's go around the room and we will just introduce ourselves.
Paul Andrews with the National Western Stock Show.
Assistant to Paul Andrews, Armando Plan, Armando Plan, Groville.
Vicki Zeppelin from Zeppelin Development.
Baby grandma live in the area.
Eric Anderson with the Mayor's Office of the National Western Center.
Titus Holloway, Mayor's Office of the National Western Center.
Daniel Lefty from Global.
Tiana Nelson with the CSU system.
Ann Elizabeth Clover.
Susan Aldretti, Councilwoman Ortega's office.
John Slapien, Globeville.
Jenna Espinosa Nuco. Alex and Hannah Nuco. Sarah DePietro Nuco.
Eric Loki, private citizen.
I am. I'm Dave Allison from, from Denver Museum of Nature and Science.
Prof. Miguel Martinez, I'm from Spanish.
Okay, I think we got just about everyone. Totally fine, Eddie. Okay, so tonight we got a full agenda, so we're going to dive right in. We will start with the partner updates. If you want to kick us off, Mr. Andrews.
Sure. So obviously we're preparing for Stock Show, 114th edition. Everything's going great. Today we toured, in addition to preparing for Stock Show, we toured the Bruce Randolph School today, me and about 6 or so board members of the Denver Scholarship Program. And we met with the leadership there, and CSU was actually there also, Tiana and Jocelyn. And we're trying to institute a agriculture program there year-round and funded. So that is on the horizon there at the Bruce Randolph School. We're excited about that if we can get that program launched. And they think they would get about 30 to 40 students in it each year, and that those would be great prospects for us to be giving scholarships to. So anyway, that's all in the planning as we're looking to move forward there. And outside of that, we are all Stock Show all the time right now. So any questions anybody has? Anybody? You guys good? All right. Next partner. Do you have any?
Brad's on his way, so if you want to go on to the next person.
Yes, I can do that. You want to do CSU then?
All right, I'm just filling in for Jocelyn until she gets here, but we have also been working quite a bit with Bruce Randolph. One of the things is our Youth Can program, and they have identified that food justice is a big issue that they want to tackle. So the students that are in that program, they're being compensated for their time, but they are also working on school lunch programs and a lot of the kind of connectivity with ag. And so we're looking at partnering with Big Green and our extension offices to create an outdoor garden that will be really complementary to some of the other stuff that they're working on. And so there's a lot of really great partners at the table to make this happen. Pretty exciting momentum on it, I think. Even we can see it as early as next semester at Bruce Randolph, so that's really exciting. I think the other thing we've been talking about a little bit, I think a lot of you were at the Youth Memory Project at Bruce Randolph, which was really exciting to see. The students presented their histories and kind of what they felt was the history of their neighborhood, but also they interviewed their peers and their families. It's really special. We're looking at ways to have that be exhibited across CSU campuses in the next year so that they can get additional exposure. They were really great projects. And then that was kind of a precursor to the Youth Action Coalition, or whatever we will let the youth rename that, because it's maybe not the best named program, but we are really focused on people struggle with that. Yeah, so we're going to be launching that in January and working on applications for students in early January for that program. And again, the youth will be compensated to be part of that. And that's the one that all of the major partners have contributed to make this happen, which is a really exciting partnership. And the idea is that the youth will all have a say in what's going to happen in different components of the National Western Center project and how their neighborhood is represented. So we're really excited about that.
Okay, do we have a Dave Allison here by any chance?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Hey, so a couple things at the Denver Museum of Nature and Science. We still have our same exhibits going on that we've had for a couple months now, the Science Behind Pixar. It's a lot of fun, it's a great exhibit, as well as extreme sports. And in addition, we just opened a new kind of pop-up exhibit called After the Asteroid. You might have seen in the papers about an amazing fossil discovery outside of Colorado Springs. And so that just opened. It's also at the museum. It's a great exhibit, really fun stuff. And we're delighted to be here and to listen in, so thank you all.
Sure. John, you want to do the board update? If you have one? Nothing?
Nothing. Liz, no, we don't have anything to deliver this evening. Liz, you have anything you want to say, something?
Brad's on his way, you know, it's a
He's
very
on his
long
way?
commute.
I give word to Brad.
He should be, he was right behind me, so.
Okay.
If you want to move on, then Brad is going to be here, so
Yeah,
if
he
you want
can
to.
come in later.
Yeah.
Sure.
John, do you have any updates on the community investment fund project where that's at? I know
No.
Debbie's been working on that. There's
No,
been
I don't have
on
anything
that.
on that, but now, I'll let Mr. Buchanan or Liz fill in on that.
Oh, any timelines, when can we expect anything at all?
Do we want to just wait until Brad gets here and then he can fill us in on the community investment fund? That sounds good. Okay. We will move on then. So the first presentation is Tiana, and she's going to do a CSU brand update for us. Let me know if that microphone up there isn't working.
Probably know as much as I do. All right. Can you guys hear me okay? Hello?
I think it's on if you just, is it a little closer maybe.
Hello? Here, I can just hold up by doing that.
You want to use the handheld?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Okay.
Okay. Well, hi everybody. So Jocelyn will be here shortly and she'll join me in this conversation. But we are here tonight because we wanted to share with you the new branch of the CSU System Campus at the National Western. And before I dive in, I wanted to just provide a little background. So this is a brand that we worked with an outside vendor on, AOR, and they basically, we were working on a really tight timeline to get this done before the stock show, before our groundbreaking in early 2020. And so really took all the materials that all the partners and all of you have contributed to over the last 6 years and did a huge brain dump with them. So it is a brand that we had to consider not only the CSU internal partners, so we couldn't use the Ram head because the system represents Pueblo and Global and Fort Collins. And we have about 150 internal stakeholders who have been heavily invested in the CSU work and our plans at the National Western Center. Obviously, important stakeholders like all of you, like all of our partners and their staffs and things like that. So we realized that really to make this happen on that quick of a timeline, we were going to have to kind of use those materials and have them like deep dive into them without involving hundreds of people in the process, which was a difficult decision, but I think that this is a brand that you'll find to be fairly multifaceted. I think it speaks to people on a lot of different levels, so I'm excited to share it with you today. And let's see, I think that's what I wanted to share before we go ahead. So, okay, so as you guys know, we've been a little bit stuck in the soup of the CSU water building at the CSU campus at the National Western Center. So this really long kind of word soup that we then we start thinking about Denver Water at the CSU Water Building at the, anyway, you get the idea. So again, we went into this, we took the guiding principles that originally came out of this group and the work that's been done and really try to figure out what is the CSU brand within that. So essentially with this, we're a small campus within the larger National Western Center campus. So we have to kind of find our own identity as this educational anchor within the space. So what we identified as the things we wanted to be and that we're planning kind of with our programming is inclusion, authenticity, innovation, and engagement. So we really kept those things in mind and really brought those out of this larger scope that had been developed through this group. So with that, we really wanted something that was easily recognizable, obviously a whole lot shorter than what we had been using, but spoke to the heritage on the site and the history and just how important that was, but also was forward-looking and thinking about how do we make sure that this feels like it has something for everyone. So with that, we came up with a name, and that is SPUR. So SPUR will be the name of the campus with the CSU system campus at the National Western Center. So with this, there will be identifiers and things like that that are related to the National Western Center itself. But when you think about the name SPUR, so it might be something you think about the railroad spur. Hi, Jocelyn. Which is not only has significance as to where we are on this site, but also is why Denver exists, is because of the shoot off in the railroad, so spur on the railroad. You might think of spur on a boot, which is a nod to the heritage of the site and definitely is important within this context. You might also think that a spur is something where it connects something like a local place, like this neighborhood here, to the world, right? So it's something that kind of is that offshoot and takes that rail spur to the next level.
Did Trump have those?
What's that?
Didn't Trump have those spurs?
Spurs? I'm not familiar with that. Maybe. And for our team, we really think of it as an action word, so something that represents forward progress. It's a place where we can spur innovation, we can spur education, kind of spur the next generation of our leaders in agriculture and water and food. So you'll also notice that, well, let me go into this one here. So the definition that we're working off of in terms of kind of how we're thinking about SPUR and its primary focus is to incite action, accelerate growth or development, and is driven by a goal to stimulate, encourage, and motivate visitors and learners of every age and background. So it's something where, the design team said this design is one that represents an open-ended structure meant to represent the unending pathways of knowledge. So if that's what you think of when you think of SPUR, that's great too. But really it's something where we feel like it speaks to a lot of different people. We went with a really playful color palette. You can see that the main color is that orange, which you'll see in a minute. It was really important to us to make sure that it worked really well with our main partner logos. So you'll see how that locks up here in a second. But orange is also a historical color for us. So it is the first color set for CSU was pumpkin and alfalfa. So the orange nods to that. And it is something that we feel like really works well with our partners. Again, a colorful color palette. There's a lot of diversity in what we can do with this brand and this look and feel, where we can really speak to what's happening on the CSU campus. And then obviously with wayfinding, that is another component where it's bold. It helps us kind of identify this campus within a campus, so people kind of understand where they are. And here we are just looking at some of the lockups. So you'll notice that the color orange that we have is kind of a middle ground between what is the National Western Center logo and what is the National Western Stock Show logo. So we feel like it really plays well with the partners. It is something that kind of locks it up. And then just to showcase, this can be used in a lot of different ways. So depending on kind of how the event is, it could be kind of switched up here. And there's not necessarily a particular order, but just kind of showcasing the fact that the colors themselves work well together. So I think that I will let Jocelyn talk. Do you want to do brand first and then Oh, sure, yeah. Thank you, Tiana. Sorry, everybody, for being a little bit late, but happy to walk in and see our new logo up on the screen. It's fun to be at the place in this project where we actually have a new way to talk about what we're doing in a way that's concise and fun, and I think a nice reference to both history and innovation. So we're really excited about what the team was able to come up with, and we hope you are too. I think, yeah, maybe we should go ahead and see if anyone has questions for us on the brand, and then I'm going to do a really quick sneak preview of the latest building renderings for CSU while we've got you. So thoughts, questions? I think one of the ways in which we're really particularly interested in hearing from you all is this was a really big surprise to us from our branding team, that they came up with this idea that you could change what's behind it to kind of give a little bit more specificity to what it is that we're doing or talking about. So I think one of the ways that we really see opportunities for linkages to your ideas and creative ideas and things that are coming out of the Authorities Cultivate campaign is the kinds of imagery that might go behind this to help continue to tell the story of what we're doing here. So you don't have to have any comments now, happy to chat offline, but if anyone has any thoughts, we're happy to hear.
Yeah, I think it's, from my perspective, it's pretty cool, unique and dynamic. And that being said, is because I think, you know, I applaud Colorado State University for everything they've done globally and stuff, but to me, this is unique and dynamic to this part, not only the city, but to this neighborhood, to this facilities, to give something unique and dynamic to for the kids, everybody to identify with. That spur is this part of Denver, Colorado, as Mickey has said often, is unique and dynamic and iconic. To me, this is an iconic symbol that can be identified all over the world. So I applaud you guys' efforts for coming up with something new, innovative, creative, and forward-thinking. I think, from my perspective, the students, I think, can really gravitate to this as well as adults. It's visionary, it's futuristic. I think it's just basically cool.
Well, thank you. Anyone else want to follow Armando? All right, well, thanks. Really appreciate that. So I think Tiana probably mentioned this before she started, but one of the things that we wanted to be sure to do was to get this in front of you all before it is launched publicly tomorrow. The other thing that we want to be sure that you see, even though they are still in concept and they're not finalized, is the evolution of the exteriors of our buildings. And so some of the, you know, when the Spur brand launches, there are a few places where you'll see the renderings of the buildings, and so we wanted you to see those first as well. So I'm going to really quickly go through this. We are planning on coming back to CAC for a deeper dive on all of our facilities. I'll need to get with you, Zach, on scheduling, but we are ready to do it in January to come back with more detail and talk with you about where CSU is in our design process. So each of the buildings is in a slightly different place, although they do look more or less like they are in the same place in design. So I'll start, I think maybe you've seen this one. This is the Animal Health Complex. That's the facility that will be built first. And while it's nice when architects make the one building that you're supposed to be looking at brighter colored, remember that all of these are sitting not in a sea of whitewashed buildings, but in a really nice, vibrant campus. So this is what that building is currently looking like, big central atrium right there at the corner of Betty Cram and the plaza. I'll just give you one picture from the interior. Again, we're going to do a deeper dive on this with you all later, but this is my favorite feature of this building, which is where you can walk by as a member of the public and look into the veterinary clinic where they're actually doing work. And the vets will have microphones. They'll be able to tell you what they're doing, and this is a really nice way to start to visualize what that'll look like. The water building, this is probably the biggest change since you all have seen renderings of this. Our design team really has worked to make it feel a little bit more like it evokes water. The side of this building is a cross-section of a river eddy. So that's
It's maybe not something that will punch everybody in the nose that this is a building that's about water, but it's a nice story for us to be able to tell. And this is looking at that from the southern end as you come up National Western Drive south, and how you might access into the backyard and get down to the river. And then just an option of what the backyard might look like. Again, all of these are still in development, so don't take them as gospel, but we're thinking about how we can talk about all of the different river basins in Colorado in that backyard. And then this is the CSU Center for Food and Ag. Again, all in concept, and these things will continue to evolve and change, but we wanted you to see those images at least before they were part of the information going out tomorrow. Yeah?
Justin, you might mention one of the big changes, I think, to the water building. Obviously, the aesthetic changed a lot, but the building, how it stepped back more and exposed more of the McConnell building.
Yeah. Thanks, Brett. Yes. I'm trying to be fast, but that is a...
You can see the edge of it there.
yeah, let me see if I can hit the right button. Let's see if I can hit the right button. Small goals for today. No, obviously not.
Is that one of the new branding colors?
Maybe.
It's either that or the Rockies uniform, one of the two. It's purple.
All right, I'll just leave it like that. I won't try to put it in presentation mode. But as Brad is mentioning, yes, we are an earlier version of this brought the building and sort of had it kind of attached to McConnell. And this leaves McConnell much more intact and allows us to celebrate the parts of McConnell that we think are the coolest, which include that roof and the skylight that runs along the interior of that. And then the sort of interface between the buildings is really through that alleyway space between McConnell and the newer place. The floors above it are set to kind of cantilever out so that there's more floor area up there because we need it. There's a lot of stuff happening in that building, but at least this way we're doing I think a nicer job of highlighting what the nice features of McConnell are. All right, well, come with questions next time. We'll have more information for you. Thanks, everybody.
Awesome, thank you, Jocelyn. Mr. Buchanan, did you want to do a partner update?
Sure. Hit a few of the highlights. We have a board meeting next Thursday. We're continuing to work a lot on supporting the building design process for the Stockyards Event Center, the Livestock Building, the Equestrian Center, and Maintenance and Ops buildings. Also, Betty Cram Drive and the Plaza, those designs are progressing, and the authority has a role in all those discussions, so we're very active in that. We're getting ready for Stock Show as well. We're designing a display that looks like we're going to be able to work out where we can have sort of some open houses in the lobby of the Livestock Exchange building. So that one, it would give some folks an opportunity to come in and learn about some of what the authority is up to, but also see that awesome lobby space in the Livestock Exchange building. So stay tuned for that. We're still working out some details. We'll be back here in January with a program that'll sort of be the follow-up from the strategic implementation plan, which is our plans for what we're calling our beta programming for 2020. These are the ideas, some of the ideas that came out of the strategic implementation plan, and some pilot projects we want to run in 2020 to see how they land. We can do some intercept surveys around them and figure out what's best received and what's not well received. So in January we'll have a dedicated presentation about that. And then lastly, 3 authority staff just last week did a Western Slope producer tour. One of our missions is around connecting the urban and rural place, and part of that's about learning about the rural place and really meeting with, speaking with producers, understanding their experience around food production. And so that's the first of 3. We're going to do, we did the western one, we'll do eastern Colorado, and then we'll do a northeastern Colorado. So those are probably the highlights for now. happy to answer any questions you have. Mr. Zappian.
I don't have any questions. Armando had a question about the benefits program.
The Community Investment Fund or so.
Could you bring him up to date on that?
Yeah, so I think there are sort of two paths for that. One is that Councilwoman Ortega and Councilwoman Sedebaca, is Councilwoman here tonight? No. Are working together and they're producing a schedule for the community conversation they're going to have around the potential formation of this new entity that would be the receiving agent, the fiduciary agent for community investment funds that would come out of the National Western Center, but also other sources potentially. I've not heard, I don't know what that schedule is yet. That was the next step on that. And then the community benefits conversation is really waiting for the triangle conversation, which will be happening in earnest in 2020. That's really sort of the best answer I've got on the community. The bigger, the community investment fund is one piece of what we see as a number of potential community benefits. So, and that really will, the rubber's going to meet the road on that in 2020. I would say end of first quarter that'll start, and I would hope be wrapped up in 2020.
So I think our next presentation, she's running a little bit late just because of traffic. So if it's all right with Tychus, we'll go straight into his report.
Good evening, everyone. Tychus Holloway again from the Mayor's Office of National Western. I got two things in my hand, first of all. Myself and Eric Anderson actually will be providing an update this evening. I don't anticipate us taking the entire time that's on the agenda, but first and foremost did want to provide an update for this month on some of the construction activities that have been going on in the campus. We've been making some pretty significant work. These are the primary areas where we're doing most of our work right now, and so we've got some site work where it's really setting up the foundation and the pad for the equestrian center, which is the site work that's on the left side of the screen, and that's out of the Lake Baton former site of that building. And then both on the north and the south side, we've got a lot of rail work going on, and I've got a couple photos to show you of our progress that's happening there. And then, of course, out in the yards, we continue to have the concurrent operations and planning with the stock show to make sure that they're got their facilities ready and geared up for the 2020 stock show. So here's just an example image of the railroad tracks that are being laid out there. And so as you know, this is a significant part of the program where we had successfully negotiated with the Denver Rock Island Railroad Authority to move their tracks away from the river. So this will allow us to open up the riverfront open space, which actually we'll talk a little bit more about in a minute. Another image of the switching tracks that are happening today out there. We've got the walls that will go on either side of this are starting to come up. So if you take a drive down National Western Drive, you actually will see quite of this work that's out there in the yards. And then also, as I mentioned, in the concurrent operations section, so this is where we're putting in some of the new pins and water stations for the livestock that will be out as part of the stock show. And so you'll see a lot of new pins out in our stockyard area. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Eric Anderson, who is a design manager, to talk through several of our recent designs as we're starting to progress those through as we get closer to construction.
Thanks, Tychus. Okay, so I'm going to go through a few of these projects that we've got going on right now and get everybody up to speed where we're at. So the first one is Betty Cram Drive. The Betty Cram Drive piece that we're working on basically goes from the river bridge to the underpass along that area. So just to get everyone oriented, the CSU Animal Health Building is here, CSU Waters Resources is here, CSU Food and Ag Building is here, and then the Legacy Building is here. This then becomes the entry into the main campus plaza on this, and then National Western Drive South is here. So the streetscape, we've just got a pretty regular street tree rhythm as we go through this. And then we plan to reuse a lot of the brick pavers that we're taking out of the stockyards as part of this area for the amenity zone. I've got a little better drawing for that on the next one. But we'll also have, of course, street lights, pedestrian scaled lights, and then we've got time as we build this and move along. We still have a lot of old historic elements that we are salvaging that we can be placing along these streetscapes as we get into more final design. And as we work up an interpretation plan for the whole campus, we'll add those pieces as we go forward. So here's kind of a blow-up of the streetscape. We've got a sidewalk, and then the street trees, and those will be raised in a little bit of a 6-inch curve. And then these are the brick pavers that we're reusing from the yards. On the animal health side of the street, we've got a 9-foot sidewalk, and on the other side of the street, we've got a 12-foot shared use path that continues through the site. They go back one. So we'll have this will be the shared use path for bikes and pedestrians that will eventually connect all the way into the triangle space, and then it also will connect south on National Western Drive South, and then also north on National Western Drive on the north piece of that, and we'll be talking about that at a later date. And then our street furnishings, the street lights and the pedestrian lights are very similar to the lights that were already out on Brighton Boulevard. Those are a little more modern. They're shiny silver. Our palette is going to be a darker black color. So we want to kind of keep this more of a heritage look through here rather than shiny and bright. And then all the streetscapes will have these same components. And then we've got different kind of benches, pots, planter pots, bike racks. And then we're still working on trying to figure out the trash receptacles, whether we do a 2 or 3 bin trash receptacle. And we're working on a waste master plan for that to get that figured out here probably in the next 2 or 3 months. All right, so the Stockyards Event Center, trying to wrap up the design on this. So just to get everyone oriented again, the rail tracks are over here on this side. The future livestock center sits down here. The equestrian center will go over here, and then the rest of the yards are north of this drawing. So we've broken this up into 2 phases for construction. One is the Stockyards Event Center itself, and then the stockyards are a second component to this. So on the Stockyards Event Center, it's got 2 components, the show arena and the auction arena. The show arena has about 1,000 seats, 500 bleacher seats on each side. And if you go to the stock show now, this replaces the use of the old Pepsi arena, which sits in the middle of the yards, that old tin building. It kind of doubles the size of that building, but this is where they would show multiple animals during the stock show, and people can bid and judge those. Then on the auction arena, this building replaces the livestock auction arena that is right across the street from the livestock exchange building. This will be a 1,000-seat bowl arena, and we've oriented the bowl this way so that we can bring animals easily in from the yards into this side. And then it's got 2 levels. So there's a ground floor level, and that also has a small break room which can be used for concessions during stock show or events. And then upstairs of that is the international room, which today at the stock show is kind of tucked way back in underneath the seats at the livestock auction arena now. So this gives it a much more prominent location. For the site itself, on the right we've got, this will be our permanent pens. We do have some of those, and these will be for the bison. The bison pens have to be built much more sturdy than the rest of the pens that we're building. So we will have about 50 bison pens that will always be there. Then for shows during the rest of the year, those pens can just be used for cattle, but during the stock show, those are the bison pens. Then there's a loading area for the bison in this area for semis. Then we've got a main entry plaza that during the stock show is kind of filled with vendor trucks and vendors and small events that can happen through there. We've got something called the Country Road. Right here will be where the Armored Water Tower gets relocated. So this will really be a real beacon along the campus, and people will enter this area through that. You can walk down this area into this, what we call an orchard plaza. So it's a grove of trees, but that kind of comes out from the building and will become a seating area. Again, during the stock show, you can sit and eat your lunch out there. During other events, it kind of becomes a main gathering point. And then the West Plaza, during the stock show, this is their herd sire area. So this is all pens, all vendors during the stock show. It's just packed. But during the rest of the year, this becomes a very flexible space for large events. We really see this as kind of the main event space on campus. This is the size of a football field. So it can be scaled for many different types of events. It's all going to be hard surface, and again, that's mostly because we've got to be able to move all the pens and stuff on it, and then it'll have truck traffic on it as we put up a stage or put up volleyball courts or whatever ends up being put on that. Armando?
In the past, you talked about, heating up in the past, you talked about heating up the floor and being able to maintain, the ground floor, warm and stuff like that. I'm thinking, is there any like sewer drains in there so you can rinse stuff off, keep it kind of warm in that area so when people walk, they're not hitting it with ice. Obviously, you're gonna have some type of snow removal and all that stuff, but something to make it more accommodating and more user-friendly.
Heating the pavement, if that's what you're asking.
Yeah, I'm asking, you're not?
We are not doing that, no.
Okay, cool, thank you.
We had talked about early on as potential with the sewer heat recovery, but there's so much energy needed to do that for pavement that it just doesn't pan out.
That's fine.
But this area also has tons of electrical and water hookups, so that when you do a small art venue, you could have 200 tents in here, all with power and water. All right. Nope. Yeah.
Speaking of power, are you figuring in any recharging stations? Are you figuring in any recharging stations for trucks or automobiles?
Yep, we'll have those. That'll be in the equestrian center and the parking structure there. Thank you. Yep. All right, so these are some.
You got one more question here.
There you go, Dave.
David.
When is Betty Cram going to start and when is it going to finish?
It will go out for pricing in early January, so it would probably start in April or May.
So when is it going to punch through onto Washington?
That will be a while. The river bridges are late in the process, so that whole thing probably won't be open until early 2023.
Okay.
All right, and so because we have to move the railroad first, we have to move the Delgany first, then we can actually start on the river bridges. So
Now,
there's a bunch of steps that have to happen before that.
have you guys already secured the land for Betty Cram on the west side of the river?
We're working on that.
Okay. That's good.
All right, so see, these are some concept renderings of the Stockyards Event Center. And one of the things we're looking at is, again, how can we reuse some of this material that we're pulling out of the stockyards? So this one looks at the potential, can we use some of that penwood as a screen on the front of this building? So we're still in concept phases because we're pricing all this stuff and we're trying to figure out, is this really feasible or not? But again, we're just looking at a lot of different ways to do this. And then the pictures on the right are kind of that orchard area that I talked about that flows out into the plaza space itself. So this is still moving forward. We're working with community planning and development to kind of finish all the comments based on the design standards and guidelines, but we're getting close on this facility. All right, then on the riverfront, we've been working on the concept for this since probably early summer. And you guys have seen this. We've been here a couple of times to talk about this. We've kind of finished concept and will now move into actual design drawings for the riverfront. But I just want to show you the concept and how we move forward on this. So this is National Western Drive here, Equestrian Center, and of course the river on the top, Betty Cram Drive coming down here. On each end of the riverfront open space, we'll have water quality ponds. And we're working on ways to kind of spruce those up a little bit so they don't just look like a hole in the ground. And those are on both ends. Then the riverfront, because we have those on both ends, we don't need to put any water quality ponds between Betty Cram Drive and 51st Avenue. So From the layout, this will probably be the most active area. We would love to see some kind of small restaurant, coffee house, something like that, kind of anchoring this corner. That's not part of our construction package. We'll leave that up to Brad and the authority to work through that as they move forward. We'll prep the site, get all the utilities ready for it, but we are not building that as part of our budget. Then there's a whole series of pedestrian paths that walk through, that kind of meander through the open space. It's not an active, it's not like a ball field or that kind of park. This is much more contemplative space. And we're able to save a number of the existing cottonwoods that are already out there. So that helps us with our planting, so it doesn't start bare right off the bat. So there's a few big ones that we can save. We're going to have a small amphitheater that we're putting in here. This is just an outdoor 50, 60 people, nothing major. We don't have a lot of space for all of that. But so then there'll be a place for small events, small performances here. And then in this area, we kind of go to a meadow, and that could be a picnic ground, just areas to lay in the grass, throw frisbee, those kind of things. And then at 4, we're working with the U.S. Army Corps on their river project. And so they have a node that you'll actually be able to get down to the river here. So we're building down to the 10-year flood line. They take from the 10-year down to the water. And so as they move forward, we'll coordinate with them. But there will be a connection that people can actually get down and touch the water that the Army Corps will build as part of their project. The sheet bridge will remain, and right now it's just going to be a historic element. We're not doing anything other than stabilizing that and making sure it doesn't fall into the river. It definitely needs some repairs, and we're working on that, on the design for that. Again, more lawn areas and paths that come up. This area right through here, right along National Western Drive, that's where the Delgany Interceptor gets buried. All right, so we've got kind of a swath that goes through there, and then the siphon that goes under the river is down in this end. That all gets rebuilt, and it's a flush building now. It's not up in the air as it is today. And then there's many potentials for public art. We've talked with a lot of folks about potential for active play that can go in here. And Brad and his team are working hard with Museum of Nature and Science, Denver Art Museum, History Colorado, to look at a way that they can do kind of a cohesive active play area or a component for the riverfront that they would help sponsor and move forward. That we're just kind of building the basic components for this riverfront, and then those pieces would be added to it after we get done.
Before you go on from that
Yes.
point, I'm going to pose a question, and I don't think
Here you go.
I'm going to pose a question that's not new, and I don't think the answer is necessarily in this entity. But regarding the other side of the river, the other bank, the Army Corps of Engineers, is doing a broad river strategy. Continually, it's been voiced the possibility of somehow leveraging some protections of the quality of the other side of the bank. And the National Western is a project in and of itself, but I just want us to be aware, somehow have this conversation. There's a lot of sort of street level conversation with people along the river and over in Globeville about, so how can we leverage a relationship with something like the National Western so that we don't end up with just a bunch of big tall condos that sell for high prices because they have this great river view. And we all know that's part of what the possibilities are, and I just don't want us to miss an opportunity. So I just want to pose that as, can we somehow establish relationships in a manner that creates some cohesion within the conversations toward breaking through on some of that, and if there's ideas, and one of the, I don't know what to say about that, because I don't feel it gets any traction. I'm not saying that cynically. It's a hard problem. But in Globeville, one of the things I've always noticed about people that have been there forever and several generations, the river was always considered an asset, not a barrier. It was always considered, something that was pretty cool. and it is the boundary of the neighborhood, right, between, so I would just like to throw that out there and try and keep that part of the conversation a little bit alive for anything anybody has to say about it.
I definitely don't have an answer, but certainly willing to make sure that community planning development plus parks and public works, as they're working through what the river kind of rejuvenation looks like through the Army Corps, plus what Washington Street and the connections look like, certainly willing to make sure that they're aware of the concern and the conversation, and bring back whatever we can in a future date.
I was just going to say, I know you're not going down to the waterfront, but further south on the Platte over the last probably 5 years, they've done a really good job opening the river to kids, to fishermen, to stuff. So I hope we keep it in mind that we need to get that last bit done between where you stop and the river actually is.
Yeah, that's super important.
Would that be Parks and Rec?
No, it will be Public Works and the Urban Waterways Project, so it is an Army Corps project.
The whole thing.
And that's both sides of the river.
Right, that's important. Thank you
Yeah.
for saying that, because that's part of, sorry, that's part of why I raised that question, knowing that those banks on both sides are what the interface is going to be.
And I just wanted to let you all know, so I work for Minalto Development as well. That's Bernard Hurley's property that will be riverfront, just a mile south. And we'll be working with the city for the promenade that's going to be right along the river. There's going to be green space, open pavilions in that development plan so far. We should know more even by early 2020 what that development will look like and what all it will include. So I can keep you all updated on how that can tie in, which is why I'm here to learn more about this as well.
Can you bring some drawings?
Yeah.
All right. So cross sections, you can kind of see how we're.
We have one more, Eric.
Oops. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No worries. So I guess my question is related to like access to this riverfront space. So if, is it, because I think natural resources are very important for all communities. So like what are the access, I don't want to say rules, but like is this only accessible to people who are participating in National Western Center activities, or anybody can use
No,
this space?
this is our most public of spaces.
Great.
And we're relocating National Western Drive. There will be parking all along this street. So our intent is to get people to this place. All right. All right, and then just the sections.
Eric,
Yo.
Ma'am, were you talking about the east bank of the river or both banks?
I mean, I was talking about the bank that's being redeveloped.
I can't hear you.
I'm talking about the bank that's being redeveloped, so
Okay,
what's on the
the east
screen?
bank.
East Bank.
Okay,
East
thank
Bank,
you.
Yeah.
I think these are important dots to connect. So I want to say that the question I posed has to do with access, family friendly, a lot of things the Army Corps is looking at in addition, and that's part of what the leveraging of the two banks can be. And I appreciate Tychus, you directing it to our community planning and development, because I do feel we have to get ahead of it to make some decisions so that the access on both banks is among the most open. This is going to be an issue. And how it feels over on the National Western Center side is going to be affected by what happens on the interior to Globeville side. And that's important too. But I would think, the whole idea of it being a recreational and educational unified set of riverbanks is something that needs floodlights on it. So all these dots connect.
Eric, I don't mean to take this off of focus, but how's the National Western Light Rail stop coming?
They're running test trains. I've heard anywhere between May and August for an opening, but I don't know an exact date. You would have to talk to RTD about that. We could maybe do some research and try to get that information for you.
I didn't know if you or Brad, had a handle on it.
I haven't heard anything more
That's,
than that.
that's what we're hearing.
All right, I'm going to keep going here. So on the cross sections, here's National Western Drive on this side, the river's on the other side. You can see where we're putting the Delgany. And then the grades as they come down. This red line is the existing grade, so you can see we're actually filling in some of these areas. Right now, this is where the existing rail line sits, and the existing Delgany sits right on this little knob. So, you know, by pushing that over there, we're able to kind of work with all the grades. You know, that we'd have walks and systems, and then being able to keep the trees that we've got. And then this is a section at the sheep bridge and how all that fits. Again, we've got a lot of bigger trees north of the sheep bridge that we can keep, and some of them are pretty nice. But it just shows kind of the grade. It's not super steep. It's pretty nice and gentle. But again, it's not very deep. We're only 100 to 120 feet between National Western Drive and the river itself. So it's a pretty narrow park, but it's long. So and these are just some images. When I talked about the coffee house or the little restaurant, this is Nixon's down in Littleton at Hudson Gardens, and it's right on the South Platte Trail. It's a great little spot to stop with your bike. They don't sell alcohol, but they've got coffee and fast food and that kind of stuff. And during a nice day in the summer, it's just packed. And so, you know, that kind of idea for what that little space could be, I think is one of the things that has kind of moved us forward with that. Then we're looking at, you know, ways to naturalize the walks. These boulders also work for active play, and kids love to climb on this kind of stuff. And then we've got little picnic areas, and then we'll work to see how we want to grade the little amphitheater that we've got to be able to provide seating and those kind of things for everyone as we move forward. All right, then the last thing I've got is a public art update. So this is an arts and venues process. Our project has a 1% for public art. That 1% money goes right to arts and venues, who controls this process. We have a little over $4 million for public art, which is a huge number. It's amazing that we can do this here. So we've done one selection already. We selected a gentleman named Cliff Garton out of Venice, California, to be the lead artist for the plaza itself. He'll be on board probably, we're hoping by stock show. He wants to come out and see the stock show, so we'll hope we'll get him under contract for his design. We don't know what he's going to do yet. We're looking at potential locations for art within the plaza. And his intent is, once he gets on board, is to work with the public to kind of, and have a series of community meetings and kind of get-togethers to figure out what this art piece should be, what story should it tell. So if you ever go on his website, Cliff Garton Studios, he's got some amazing stuff. They did a Martin Luther King Jr. memorial in Memphis that is just fantastic. It's very powerful. But they've just got a lot of really good things that they can do. So we've got them on board. Our selection committee, we shortlisted 4 artists for the river bridges. We did a tour with them last Friday. They met some of the community members. John, I think you were part of that. They have their presentations back to us on the 16th of January. And then once we shortlist 1 or 2 of these artists, they will then come into the community to refine their designs to make sure that it fits with them. Now, the river bridges, we have about $750,000 per bridge for public art, so it's a big number. It's really good, so that'll add a lot to those. And we're getting started on our process for the riverfront open space. What we've been talking about, we have about $1 million for the riverfront. So we think that 300,000 of that may go to a national call, and then the rest of it will come out, and we want to focus on local artists. Arts and Venues is also looking at doing something called an artist boot camp, which they have never done before, but it's basically taking young artists or artists that are just starting, telling them about this process for how you get into a public art process and work with them. And we may even take one of the calls for art for that and focus it just on the folks that go to that boot camp. So we're really trying to bring up the artists with this. The other option is that we could bring in this bigger artist, the first one we picked through our regular call, and they could help mentor some of the newer artists. So we've got a lot of good things coming with that, and there'll be more with that. We think this boot camp will probably be in February or March is what we're looking at. Yeah.
Just an idea for the riverfront space. I've seen a lot of cool interactive art pieces in my hometown. Basically, in our like downtown area, we have like huge like xylophone type things that allow like kids to like play music, and I mean there's more instruments to a big harp. So just like lots of opportunities for not only just to have like a statue somewhere, but also for people to interact with it.
Yep, that's great. Anybody else on that? And then we'll continue to look for additional art opportunities. We still have budget remaining after we get through all of these. So.
One of the things that came up in the discussion about the selection of the artists, it was very strong that they reflect the history of the surrounding neighborhoods, the cultural identification of the multi-ethnic groups that have lived in the area since Dave's grandpa's time. Is Mickey still here? Yeah. Some of the things that Mickey's mentioned over the past years, the history that reflects the original inhabitants of the area. Somehow this should all be integrated, and it's a horrendous task here, but it can be done in whatever artwork is finalized. And we emphasize that with the artists that we talked to the other day, and they certainly got an earful from some of the other people that were there. But you're absolutely correct, man, that it's got to be contemporary, but also should reflect, as has been discussed here, the realities of this area, either through need or greed. It was done. So that artwork should reflect the realities of what's happening here, but hopefully open some aspirations for the future.
Is that correct? Pretty much so?
Yeah.
Just to respond to that, and to your point, I think it's really important that we not only call for local artists, but outreach to local artists as well, because local artists are the ones who have those stories. And I'm sure, I tried to look up the artist up on my phone, Cliff Garden was his name, but the internet is not working for me. I'm sure that is great, but again, he's from California. I would really love to see Denver artists represented, local artists represented on the National Western Center campus.
Are you an artist?
I am.
Well, I would invite you to sit with us sometime, if you have the time.
Yeah.
Okay.
You have my email? We can exchange information after.
Thank you.
The arts and venues process is, you don't know where an artist is from really until you interview them. What we're doing on the riverfront is we want to focus on local artists specifically, and that's something new for arts and venues. Okay, any other questions on anything I talked about? All right, thanks.
Did you have anything else, Titus? Okay. I think we have Miss Sanchez in the back.
is Xiomara Sanchez, and I work for the Census Bureau. I'm a partnership specialist, and thank you, SAC, for the invitation. So I'm going to start, this is kind of like a 101 census, so I'm sure a lot of this that I'm going to show you guys already know. But my job as a partnership specialist is building partnerships and finding ambassadors that are going to help us to spread the word about the importance of the census. So I think this group is key for that, and that's what I'm here for. So this is a little bit of overview. So why we do the census is actually in the Constitution, in Article 1, Section 2 of the U.S. Constitution, and it's mandated by the Constitution. So that's why we do that decennial census, which is going to be in 2020. So what is mandated by the Constitution and also determines apportionment in Congress. There's actually $675 billion in federal funding, and it's actually data that is essential for our Congress redistricting. So it is the law, it's safe, it's easy, and it only takes a few minutes. So actually, for the first time in history, the census is going to be actually available online for the first time. People still can do it the other way, and we're going to actually go in details a little bit in a few minutes. So the confidentiality is actually a big piece, and we always get this question, like, how do I know my information is going to be confidential? So it's actually protected by Title 13, and the information is stayed confidential for 72 years. Someone asked me the other day, why 72? It was probably the average age. You know, we run our numbers, everything by data, so it was probably the average age back in the first census. That was kind of like the answer that we have. So this is the part that I think matters the most right now, is how do you respond to the census? Internet, phone, paper, and in person. Internet is actually going to be, like I mentioned before, the first time in the history of the census. So there's definitely going to be some challenges. The phone, so people's going to dial a number, and there's going to be 59 different languages available for people to participate. In paper, it's going to be in English and in Spanish. And that last option that mentioned in person is when actual enumerator, which is a person that will knock at your door if you didn't actually go with the three first options. So you didn't do it over the internet, you didn't do it over the phone, and you didn't get a paper in the mail, there's someone that is going to come and knock at your door to make sure that you complete the census. So this is actually in a study that was actually done by the George Washington University, and is actually showing all the federal funding programs that are funded through census data. And I can actually provide this information to Zach in case that anybody wanted to have a copy or something. I can provide this to him in a digital way. So one of our biggest partners is the City and County of Denver. So we have a complete count committee with the City and County of Denver, which is represented by 250 different organizations, all members of the city, including actually city agencies. So what they're doing, like I mentioned before, is they're ambassadors to promote the census in the city. But we do have actually complete count committees for every state, every city, and every county. So we use these complete count committees as a strategic for outreach. We also work with tribal, state, and local government. And we actually have these complete count committees to plan how to outreach to our community because of the diversity that we have in the United States. So this is just to give you an example. So how a complete count committee, and again, we have actually one in the City and County of Denver. and is represented by many different organizations. So as a partnership, we provide comprehensive 2-hour training. So we provide regular updates. So there's actually a chair and a co-chair. And we are the ones responsible for providing updates coming from the Census Bureau. So we also provide technical advice. So the actual census day is April 1st. I believe it's not. I'm sorry, I promise it's not April Fool's. We got the question the other day, is that the day for sure? And I'm like, no, it's April 1st. We still don't know why they picked the day, but that's going to be the actual census day, April 1st. But the self-response, which means that you can go over the internet or answer by phone, is going to start on March 23rd. So that day people can start responding to the census, but the actual date isn't it until April 1st. So as a partnership, we also work with community members, business chambers, business owners, public venues, and we do actually presentations to make sure that people is informed about the census. So our job is educating the community. So these are actually some key dates for the census, as I mentioned before. So these actually, right now, December and the beginning of January is going to be a CO outreach. So starting February is when we're going to do the hard push to make sure that we cover all the areas and people know that the census is happening and why they should be participating. So we have field support and operations offices in Denver, Colorado Springs, Longmont, and Aurora. This is actually just an example of some of the partners that we have. But I wanted to give it out more for questions in case that you guys have questions for me. Go ahead.
You know, the president wanted to get on the census. One of the questions was, one of the questions that the president wanted to put on there, are you a citizen? To me, that's irrelevant. You're counting people there. That's the focus of the census.
Yeah, so just to give an update.
So how do you encourage people, I don't want to use this word undocumented or whatever. I mean, they're vital too, because without them, counting them, you're not, it's not a true representation of the population of the U.S.
So yes, so the questionnaire is going to have 9 questions, and the citizenship question is not going to be included.
Yeah, I understand.
So, so I think it's also important, and it comes with education, to educate our community that we're counting single people. That's what we're counting. So we're not counting if you are a green card holder or if you're a citizen, we are counting people. So there's actually another surveys, because the Census Bureau always does surveys, so there's other surveys that actually are going to ask about the citizenship question. This census is the decennial census that happens every 10 years, and that specific questionnaire, the citizenship question is not going to be included. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, but how do you encourage people that are undocumented? How do you encourage people that are undocumented, that are afraid to be counted because of deportation, to put it point blank? How do you get them to get counted? How do you encourage them to step up?
So we are partnering with different organizations, and some of the organizations that we are partnering with, they work with immigrants, refugees, and they're trusted voices within their communities. So they come to these trusted voices and probably ask, should I do this? So we are, again, relying on these organizations to help us encourage these people to participate. Because when people do not participate, you know, there's a lot of things that they're losing. So that's what we're going through these organizations, to help their people to understand what the census is about. Because I can tell you, because I have been out there, there is a lot of lack of education about the census, and people don't know what it is. Some people just know that it's about counting people. They don't know that has to do with transportation, with federal funding. So that's what we do when we do the presentations, is educating the community about what the census is about and why they have to participate. So we just partner with community organizations to help us with that community that you mentioned. That's what we're doing. Now our job is educating them and encouraging them, but it's up to, you know, the person if they want to participate. But our job is making sure that they do. Does anybody have another question? Not too many at a time, please. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate the time. And have a good evening.
Awesome, thank you. Next we have Mr. Pacheco. Thanks, sir.
Typist Eric, I heard some of the comments in the back, and if you can provide some of those musical art pieces, that'd be really great for my family because they love them up in Estes Park. So whatever you can do, the Pacheco family would really appreciate it. Let us get sit up here real fast. So real quick, I'm here to give you an update on the Triangle project, which is basically phases 3 through 8 of the National Western Center campus. My name is Chris Pacheco. You probably recognize me as the Deputy Director of the North Denver Cornerstone Collaborative. I am now the Executive Director of the Performance-Based Infrastructure Office and also the Chief Projects Officer in the Mayor's Office. So that's a long title, so I apologize for fumbling that a little bit. Also before that, I spent some time in public works, building projects throughout the city, so been in the city for a little while. So just to get us orientated a little bit here, we've been talking about phases 1 and 2 for a while. Phases 3 through 8 is what I'm here to talk to you about. It is encompassed by that orange dotted line that you see throughout the site down south. That orange line is supposed to represent a triangle. If you're technical like me, it's really a polygon, but apparently a polygon project doesn't really roll off the tongue, so triangle project is kind of what we named this. Get to my notes. So what is PBI? So before I get into this slide, PBI is really a procurement method and a way to design, build, and pay for projects. I equate it to something similar to us buying and building a house, whereas we can't really afford to buy and build a house all at once. So we would go to a bank and make payments. The bank would fund it, and then we would make payments to that bank over 30 years, and then we would own our home. For this project, it's similar, except a lot more complex because it's a lot more money. So that's why PBI isn't for all projects. And should be used with caution. And that's why the mayor created the PBI office. If a project is appropriate, PBI will ensure that it stays true to Denver's core values of inclusion, equity, and economic opportunity for all. PBI will also establish a neutral, standardized, and transparent process to evaluate partnerships with private equity firms. So what's the role of the city in this triangle project? Well, first, the city and county of Denver is the principal land and facility owner. So they own the land, they own most of the buildings. PBI's role is to work with the community, work with the development partner in contract negotiations. We're also signatory to the agreement, and we will also manage the contract throughout the procurement process. We will also work with City Council because ultimately they approve the contract just like any other project that we do here in the city. So that's something we work on. The Mayor's Office of the National Western Center, they're the sponsoring agency. They are going to be helping us develop content for the Triangle project. The National Western Center Authority, they're the 100-year lease. They hold a 100-year lease with the City and County of Denver on campus, and they are the signatory to the framework agreement. So why are we doing this project? Getting to my notes. So we want to pursue this project first and foremost to advance the mission, vision, of the National Western Center campus and help it with its long-term success. We want to activate this campus through a mix of uses to serve neighborhoods and provide job creation. We plan to do this by defining terms in this contract for small business, workforce development, housing, and the community use of the 1909 building. We also want to integrate the project into phases 1 and 2 in the surrounding neighborhoods. And we'll do this by ensuring the developer pays close attention to the approved neighborhood plans and stay consistent with the design character of phases 1 and 2. So what are we building? So first, we will renovate the 1909 historic building. We will then build the 10,000-seat arena. We will then look to build a new expo hall, and then we will build all supporting infrastructure. So that is basically the roads, utilities, sidewalks, open space, and parking that supports those buildings. We also want to provide additional supporting development to activate the campus. So that's the general idea of the project. So throughout this procurement process, we're going to have a big engagement strategy. We plan to work with the community by hosting city events and also using existing community events. We plan to work with the ESGBA, GES Coalition, Global First, and obviously this Community Advisory Committee. We also want to work with the small businesses also through city events and existing business association meetings. We would also like to create industry forums to engage the small businesses as well. Obviously, with this type of engagement, we will use outreach tools such as email blasts, newsletters, social media, websites, flyers, surveys, so on and so forth.
How would you like to do questions at the end of the presentation?
You can, however you want to.
I just want to, regarding the community outreach, I appreciate that you've got the usual, RNOs listed there. But it is constantly the case that there's massive dynamic outreach into the holistic population that is not expressed, even with that being a valid part of the list. And I feel like it's kind of a minimalist. So I just want to suggest that you revisit that, because there's so many ways to do outreach, and it doesn't have to all be explored now, but let's not just, have the checklist.
Yeah, absolutely. And, as we look at this, we'll definitely come up with some unique strategies to also get to the community. We know it's tough, so.
You can add the reference to that intent at the very least.
No, point well taken on that. In addition to our outreach, obviously we want to do Spanish translation because we want to make sure that our message is received by all people in the neighborhood. So this is really what we want to know. What's the schedule? The key dates I want you to recognize here is this released draft request for proposals, which is the fall of 2019. Really, I have a group of people right now holed up in a community or a conference room working on this document to go out to the proposers tomorrow. The goal is to also have it open to the public Monday, but that's just because we have to do a lot of conversions to make it ADA accessible. The next key date is the issuance of the final RFP, which is the fall of 2020. So between the fall of 2019 and the fall of 2020, that's where we're going to do this community engagement process. Something unique about this procurement style is that when we typically do RFPs, it's city people kind of defining the project, and then we go and get a contractor or a designer or whatever. In this process, we're going to have an iterative process with not only the proposers but with the community as well to help define the goals of this project. So it's a unique type of process. So with that, blew through that pretty quickly, so I apologize, but any questions on this?
So is it a foregone conclusion that the Expo Center will be demolished?
You know what, that's a question I can't, I'm pretty sure, yeah, because we have to use all the space to do the Expo Center, so. But as we get into this a little bit more, I'll know more, Mickey, to answer that question.
Nobody's invited to figure a way to reuse the Expo.
Talking about this building?
Yes.
Yeah, so I think the strategy behind it is to send the RFP out to the proposers to see what their thoughts are on how to maximize the utilization of the land and provide the community benefits and the infrastructure that's there. When we look at the overall aerial, because of the angle of which Betty Cram Drive comes from west to east, the building is technically in the way of part of that road, and so they may find a unique way to actually have the roadway come through, but reconfigure portions of the building if they see it as being feasibly, financially feasible for them. And so I don't think that it was a 100% foreseeable that it had to be demolished as part of it, but the realities of that this building is in the way of the roadway infrastructure, they may come back with that as a proposal.
So Mickey, to add on to that, as Titus was saying, although it might be technically difficult, one of the proposers can find a way like, hey, actually, this may be a good way for us to utilize this building, save some money, and go. Again, we don't know until we start working through those negotiations.
Thank you.
Thanks, Titus. Questions?
Is that the same for the Coliseum?
Again, yeah, we'll go through an iteration of like what they think is their best way of providing all of those building uses.
I have a couple questions that I feel overlap, and so I withheld until all the reports were done. One has to do with the utility. And I think a progress question would first be, and this might be a Tychus question, I'm not sure. The Denver office of the Western Center, your office, NWC-CAC, was doing very well getting things done horizontally in a manner that could optimize the regenerative or the net zero achievement goal of the utility. And I know that is a cost thing. So I kind of would request a comment on an update on, is that still the case? Are we still optimistic? And what is happening with the utility? Is it still in the probationary period? Where is the neighborhood engagement plan that's coming with that? Maybe I'll just say these and you guys can take them any way you want. It would be really great to hear about that. There was some suggestion that they would be coming back to kind of elaborate on some of this to this body. The other thing that I'd like to hear about is kind of a follow-up to a couple, to bring to this table a couple things that I addressed in the public hearing for the design. What's the title of that? The book.
Design Standards and Guidelines.
Thank you. The Design Standards and Guidelines. One is to refresh us about what the saddle group is, the group of people that was established a couple of years ago that are kind of talking behind the scenes, that are partners that have to do with the coordination, and what that constitutes and what the loop is. The other is the, Brad, what's the planner's name? What's the planner's name?
Brad
Johnson, thank you. Brad Johnson is going to incorporate this too. The goal, the awareness of looking from the neighborhoods toward the National Western Center, 360 degrees, not just out of the National Western Center when we're thinking about things that are kind of like plane, view plane preservation. The three areas that I was concerned that be very conscious of, that we've talked about before with it at the CAC, were the light aesthetics, the noise aesthetics, and the view plane, and then the building massing in there. So I just kind of want it to be at this table, these things to talk about, and for people to have a clear idea of who's at the lead in these conversations, where the partners are putting their heads together and where these things are happening in a way that are going to eventually lead to the detail, which is a gray area, and how are those all being sensitized like that. So I don't even know if the utility ties into the triangle. I'm a little confused about that. But if you guys could address those things, I would appreciate it. I know there's numerous questions, but it seems like the best way to do it.
Sure. Just one point of clarification. On the utility side, are you asking about the energy?
Well, Well, yeah, is it AEG?
EAS.
EAS.
They're talking about renewable energy. How's it going to be more efficient and effective?
Well, all of the above. There's a closed loop, open loop system that's pretty, it's the net zero commitment from the beginning. And I remember vividly one of Gretchen's reports. Well, actually, I don't know if it was here at an authority board meeting, but one of Gretchen's reports were Gretchen Holler, people remember Gretchen, was very specific about certain things have to be done in certain ways for the optimum net zero goal to be met. And so it isn't just the reclamation, the regeneration, it's the whole strategic plan for the utility. And how's that shaking out? Because that affects some of the costing decisions in the buildings, as I understand it. And when Eric was talking about one building, you're costing it out and seeing if it's feasible. Whenever I hear those two things together, costing it out and seeing if it's feasible, then I go, oh, there's so many decisions behind that have to do with the whole quality and intent of the full project. And the utility is one of those things that is part of the mission of the project. So I'm trying to get a fix on how that's being kind of protected in this. And I get little pieces of it here, that this is being done over here with heat reclamation and that. But it's kind of like, how are we doing? How is it coming? Can we make a net zero campus? Does it look like it's feasible?
So just in general, and then Brad's got, I think, a few things to add. Obviously, that is one of the goals and one of the foundation principles is to make sure that as we can to investigate and do our due diligence on if we can have a net zero campus, but also to integrate those elements that start to make the campus not only net zero but also resilient. So we continue to work with Excel on concepts around microgrids for the campus, but we also are definitely in the midst of heavy conversations around the energy conversion from the Delgany wastewater pipes. I'll let Brad speak a little bit more about just at a high level where we're at. I think it would probably be appropriate for us to come back here soon with an update and more specifics on that, but as well as Brad's got some ideas on Saddle as well and how it integrates into the process here.
Yeah, we're very much in the middle of the on the sewer heat recovery system analysis right now. And for those of you who may not remember this, there's been some conversation about it. This is about capturing the thermal energy that's in the two 6-foot Delgany interceptor wastewater pipes that are on the east side of the river. And it's an incredible solution to my way of thinking, because we wanted to move those pipes because it blocks access to the river, and it's very expensive just to move those pipes just for that. And then a bunch of really smart people sat down and said, hey, we might be able to actually use that thermal energy in that sewer pipe to heat and cool the buildings on the campus. And the city put out an RFQ, I think, and a number of teams responded. They selected this EAS group that's NWave. They're one of the largest, if not the largest, in North American district energy companies. They create these kind of district energy systems, not like this one, but solar and geothermal and other things on college campuses and large sort of institutional campuses. A in the EAS is AECOM, and S is Saunders Construction. That's the builder. NWave would be the operator, basically, for a 40-year period. So they have to build a good system because they are responsible to produce the energy and upkeep the system and pay for anything that doesn't, that breaks down or whatever for 40 years. And it's net zero. I mean, it's a zero carbon system. It's phenomenal, and actually it's been fascinating to watch and learn about it, because it's really created a different kind of law. It's really created, like when you think of water law and senior water rights, it's kind of like now we have senior sanitary sewer rights, because we will have the rights to the thermal energy in that pipe that will keep someone from up the pipe pulling out more than sort of we have rights to now, where we are right now. So everyone agreed it's a great idea. Let's pursue this. We entered into, the city entered into an exclusive right to negotiate period with EAS some number of months ago, 7 or 8 months ago, 9 months ago, something like that. And their agreement would be with the authority, and then we would have subcontracts with the stock show, with WSSA, and with CSU. So there's sort of 3 basic agreements. Our agreement with EAS, and then these 2 sub-agreements with the partners. And then the campus, the operation of the campus that we will do is the other portion of the contract. The way it shakes out by building loads is that the authority and its operations would be about around 60% of the use, CSU's buildings would be about 30% of the use, WSSA about 10% of the use. The goal was that the pricing be comparable to a traditional system. That was what EAS said they can accomplish. They are close to that. They are not there right now. And that premium cost and what it is what we're discussing right now. I don't know how else to put it. We need CSU and WSSA to sign up for this, and then and we will know that from them in the next 30 days, I would say, maybe 60 days. The authority then would vote to adopt that if the authority board goes. I will tell you that the authority is extremely committed to this. It is most of what I personally am working on right now. I am very strong advocate for this system. I think it's amazing. It's innovative. It's not been done at this scale anywhere else before. But we've got some more work to do, and so we are in a lot of detailed meetings right now to figure out whether we can get it in a pricing. I mean, I think folks understand that it's valuable and they're willing to pay a premium. The question is, how much of a premium can we just flat out afford to pay? Because that, at the end of the day, for the authority and its operations, we really have to figure out what is reasonable for us to afford to pay. But I'll tell you, if this, I hope it does, and I think it will. But if it doesn't, I'll tell you, it won't be for lack of trying. That's for darn sure.
Hey, Brad, do you think it obviously cost is a factor here? To me, it'd be, if you can't achieve the ultimatum, which is, to me, you're right net zero for the whole campus. But short of that, it would be nice if you guys could design a system that maybe you could do it in phases.
Yeah.
The most important thing, we do this, X, Y, and Z. The second thing, we do it, once this is successful, then your grid or whatever you design allows you to expand into the next phase, and then the final phase, and then eventually, the whole campus is net zero.
You must be at our meetings, because we're talking about exactly those kind of ideas. If we can't do the whole campus, what can we do? How do you set it up so that you can expand it in the future? Is it possible to expand it to the triangle? All those kind of things are exactly what we're talking about. Did you have a question? Yeah. And then anything else on that? I could talk. I was okay if I talk about Saddle. I'm a long answerer. I'm sorry. The Saddle Committee. It's a little confusing. The Saddle Committee is represented by the partners in the city, and then there's an American Institute of Architects representative, and it's advisory. It does not hold. It cannot technically hold up a building permit. Its purpose is to coordinate. The people that are there are folks who are seeing all of the buildings and all of the elements, from the public elements to the urban furnishings, the street furniture, the lighting packages that you're seeing, materials, every design of everything. So that we wanted one place where at least one group was seeing everything, because at the city that's not the case. The city, the development services, it may go to this person this time and this person another time, and we wanted to make sure it was very cohesive. In fact, the city is what has the teeth on the design review. The design standards and guidelines are what the city use to say yes or no to a design or to push or pull. That doesn't, I will tell you, that doesn't keep the saddle committee from pushing also and pushing hard on design quality, because we do. But our primary role is to try to make sure that everyone understands what is happening on the whole campus and how those things can relate to each other.
You mentioned AIA, which is American Institute of Architects. That is part of that group, which I applaud that effort, because the American Institute of Architects bring in a unique flavor, dynamic overview to keep all that together, like you just laid out. The city does one aspect of it, this group does another, but AIA, to me, they look at the whole picture. And they bring their tools. When I mean tools, they mean the architectural tools to see how everything is integrated together. And I applaud your efforts for bringing the AIA. I'm not a member, I don't have nothing to advocate for. I mean, nothing to gain by saying anything, but I think that's a good strategy.
So, to reveal a little bit of a hidden agenda that I have for these questions, these are the kinds of things to me that I wish would come unprompted. This is sort of, I've become a little bit heartsick about the content and substance of the National Western Center Citizens Advisory Committee. For those that continue after the first of the year, I feel like, a lot of the excitement and enjoyment was the very creative that went into this over the years, and the conversations that now the folks that are implementing this have the benefit of stepping off from. And so when I hear you say, Brad, that it's really exciting and to learn about this and see that's fantastic, yes it is. And it's the kind of thing I want people to feel that they own. And it's become, to me, an unsatisfying sequestered process where it's not automatic that the meeting with the utility that came to the meeting here a number of months ago said that it was discussed and that they were very enthusiastic. We'll be back to talk about milestones with neighborhood engagement and that kind of a thing. It's not automatic that the professionals in the authority office or the groups of folks having fun with this implementation would come so that we continue to be part of the experience of what this is to create it. The reporting is, in my experience, has become sort of a checklist reporting. I appreciate that this is a place where the focus can happen, and this is always really good. The amount of work people are doing is phenomenal. I think that this is going to be a good project, and I think that it still isn't, to me, doesn't have the trajectory of becoming what it really truly could be. So I'm just saying that I hope that everybody that stays involved, some of this conversation proves it. If an individual that's on the CAC, like Armando just did, responded in a way that shows that there's interest and that there's an awareness of, I just would ask that the enjoyment not be lost. There's a lot of creativity still to come about, and when we start talking about involving youth too, I mean, I'm very concerned and about the sort of non-inclusionary type of outreach and engagement as we develop a youth presence in this. I think there's a lot more that can be looked at with that, and a lot of it has to do with the learning and that kind of a thing, and the very experience of building. So I'm just asking that. I heard the Denver Museum of Nature and Science at another venue say something about building something at the National Western Center that's made of all, I can't remember, it's like some kind of special materials. I have to find out and I went, Sparks was, I have to find out from him what it was, but it was like, oh my God, that is so fantastically interesting. Why isn't that the kind of thing that is being brought back to have fun with? Where is the conversation where, so anyway, I just want to that's my somewhat hidden agenda, asking sort of a leading question, because I'm very excited about the utility. The things that you're enjoying discovering and seeing and learning and being a part of, those were very much components of what were discussed coming into it that became the RFP, that came out of the people that were there, that had experience and instincts and desires, and were looking at what the ramifications would be in this environment of the city of Denver doing a net zero regenerative campus like this that could be scaled even. So, case in point. So anyway, I just want to say that. And I have one last simple question, and you may not be able to answer this because it's real estate. But what is the strategy with selling the building where the authority office is? Is that being sold, and how? I understand that that's being sold and may have been sold to help finance another part of the project. I mean, could you put the facts on the table so that they're real clear about that?
Here's what I think we know so far. So the city bought that building, I think in early 19, because they wanted to make sure there was discussion around it selling, and they wanted to make sure that it's
early 2019 or 1919?
2019.
Because you never know around here.
Yeah, that's right, 2019. Because they wanted to make sure that it didn't just get flipped for like condos or something. I mean, who knows what could have happened, so the city wanted to control that. In late summer, they put out an RFP looking for proposers to buy the building. They put descriptions in there around mission and vision and all the things. It was very intentional about what the outcome was that they wanted, and they took proposals. I will also tell you, this is not a secret, that the authority ran, and it was published. We did a competition and found some developers who shared our vision, and we put together a proposal as well to purchase the building. We hope to hear sometime soon. I know they got multiple proposals, but the money that they got, that came out of the project, that paid for the project, paid for the building. When it sells, will go back into the project. So it was a sort of a very short-term use of project dollars. And I want to respond to I think you may bring up a good point. We when I think about why we haven't, at least from the authority side, and I suspect this is true for NUCO too, we've all been working on it. We haven't talked about the energy deal because there hasn't been anything new to report. I mean, but continuing to talk about what we're doing is you made a great point. We need to be bringing it up regularly. And to me, the reason I say we haven't anything to report is we're just kind of crunching numbers with these guys. That the last time that they were here was really the last time there was sort of new design done or whatever. It's been negotiations and pretty, I mean, yes, I get very passionate about it. That's why I'm working very hard, but I can assure you the work itself right now is not very exciting. It's number crunching and very detailed, but I'm just trying to express that we are very committed to trying to see if we can get it done and into a reality. That said, your point is well taken on that topic or anything else we're working on, that we need to just do a better job and more frequent job of bringing things to this group to share what we are all excited about and why you're all sitting around the table in the first place. So I get it.
And as a continual tribute to the fact that the reason you're where you get to be, that you're excited about, is because of a lot of what was fed into this. Now you are here, you are at this table because of what was around this table. And I'm not talking, anyway, it's a long story and it's a lot of people. One of the reasons that I want to be aware of the costing of getting things done as you work with this complex budget, which I'm so glad it's another job I'm glad I don't have. But I was concerned when the authority office, I think it was, or I don't know which office, went to the city council to ask for an additional several $million for a particular item that had to do with, I can't remember what it was. If somebody can refresh my memory, and it was voted down. Okay, can you just quickly say what that is? Because I'll make my point, and I think you'll understand why.
Yeah. So, so it was one of the first things that I did coming into the office. Yeah. But we had a request in the city council to allocate an additional $1.45 million to the program, And in part, that was as a result of the settlement that we had with DRIR. And so there was an amount that wasn't contemplated that we were going to pay for, but we needed to settle.
And DIRI is?
The Denver Rock Island Railroad. So that was the key
For
part of
moving the miraculous accomplishment of moving the rails.
Absolutely, which then is one of the biggest things in addition to the Delgany pipes, allowing us to have access to the river. So we felt it was appropriate to ask City Council for the additional money to help cover the amount of the money that was in the settlement that we hadn't originally anticipated, which we felt was a greater benefit to the city as a whole as well as to the campus.
Okay, so thank you. And I was totally unequipped to give the pointed, concise focus. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up is for those that continue with the CAC. To me, I did not see an understanding on the City Council of the significance of this. And I also did not see on the City Council in the discussion, and the tape is there for folks to go back and look at the discussion, an understanding what an extraordinary accomplishment that was, and that there was a tremendous amount of input from the constituents in the neighborhoods. I know because I was involved with many of those conversations with people talking about moving the railroad, and it got feisty there for a while, the railroad sued and all that kind of a thing, but the CAC in that discussion was delegitimized by a city council person saying, oh, it's just a couple people on the CAC and they don't even matter, not acknowledging that that is a hugely significant accomplishment to get that moved. And I felt like there were some good reasons, but if you look at the entire budget challenge of this entire project, talk about having to compensate to phase the regeneration, Armando, the budget, if we can get funding like that, that makes the budget go further toward things like the net zero. And the CAC can be advocates for that. And I wouldn't testify from my little niche of heaven there and everything, but I just want to say that I think that the CAC, for those that continue in the next year, and for the authority office, I think communicating incrementally around the creativity and what this is will lead to better collaboration if there is policy and disbursements and things like that. Plus, we need to help. We need the understanding to be more particular sometimes, and you can't just get that overnight in one meeting. It has to be built on that sort of enthusiastic buy-in and the depth of understanding what's going on. So, another case in point.
I have a concern, and I think AE has hit on it. We have these meetings, there are comments, you say that you have the opportunity to speak and tell us about the programs. There are comments, but frankly they're not listened to. And I went to the design meeting yesterday, which was an invitation to the whole city to come and look at the design standards. 2 people were there, AE and myself. Apparently, there's not enough interest really or opportunity for people to think that they can be effective if they're going to come to those meetings. I mean, I thought it was really sad walking in there and finding there was only one other person who really thought it was important enough to come to this meeting. There was a lot of publicity. I got 2 flyers myself. The flyers were rather complete. And in looking through design standards, I've been at, 4 years in meetings, and many of the things, or most of the things that I've ever brought up were not in the design standards in terms of basically principles. I'm not asking for the particular design, but just the principles weren't in there. And I think that somehow we need to find a better way if you're going to really make this a meaningful committee or organization to basically truly involve the people and listen to them. And basically we have these meetings, and then the National Western Authority has their meetings. And frankly, I don't think there's any connection that really goes on. And I'm asking that there be more, that you listen more. Yesterday, I asked...
You know that the authority doesn't do the design standards and guidelines, just to be clear. I mean, you're looking right at me, and
Well, I don't know who does it.
Okay,
I'm
okay.
not, I'm just saying
All right,
that.
you can yell at me about stuff that
whoever-
I don't do for sure. But-
Whoever's doing it is all I'm saying. Is
Okay,
It's
all
not
right.
getting through. I assumed it was the authority. It's not the authority, but whoever it is. After, during the meeting or shortly after, I said I was concerned, and the reason I got involved here was that I felt that the National Western was a big compound. It was a fenced compound. It wasn't admitting not only the community, but everybody felt they needed some permission to come in here. There was no ownership in there. And at the 2 meetings ago, I brought up the idea, where are the entrances? And there was one entrance. And yesterday I met with Eric, and I said to Eric, it seems to me it's still a compound. Do we still have barriers? And Eric said, well, why don't you come to the meeting tomorrow and we can talk about how it's not a compound, that we're opening up this area and it's going to be open all except at special times. Well, Eric said, come to this meeting and you'll see it. Well, I saw Eric today and he said, oh, I forgot about it, or I didn't bring it, or whatever it is.
But I do have a diagram that I can talk to you about.
Well, the point is it's what this whole organization should really know about. I mean, that's a key element of this whole thing. Are we going to be integrated physically into the community? It's, when it came up before, I said, where's the entrance? You're showing an entrance, but one of my concerns has always been exactly this. And they said, there are plenty of entrances, don't worry about it. But I just don't think that whoever, and I'm not saying it's the authority, I'm not saying it's you, I don't feel that whoever it is responsive to the requests or the issues that came up.
Anyone else?
I want to acknowledge that I get that the Denver office, mayor's office of NewCo, the office is the builder, the designer. I just want to be real clear that, and Eric's team works right out of, in tandem with that. And from the beginning, I'm not a believer that Denver is just a builder. I think Denver has Parks and Recs. It has lots of things that can become program partners. So I don't have as sharp of a curtain coming down as I see in some of the strategic conversations. But I do feel like there is, the thing I want to emphasize is I really think there's still a lot more creativity and that people can find entry points into as the details become fleshed out in this. And I feel like the trajectory is going to miss that if this doesn't start to feel different, because the excitement is something that people just want to share, or that the recognition is that there's a peership of engagement for people that deserve to understand how this is being created, even if they're first, flush. Otherwise, it just becomes an institutional push forward to get the project done, and progress reports are the relationship rather than engagements. And there's a lot that goes into that in a lot of ways that can be translated to the street that aren't along the conventional lines. So, I do feel like the team is pretty focused on the build with what is, and I think it's a really good team. I just feel like it's the communication and the incorporation of some of the things are somehow the loop has closed and something has happened that it's kind of hard to describe. But anyway, I think we all know what we're all kind of talking about. So.
All right, unless there is anyone else, we have run out of time. So thank you all so much for coming. Have a great, happy, and safe holidays, and we will see you guys here in January.
How are you? I've been